My dear brothers and sisters, sometimes the simplest things in life hold the greatest power. Salt, that humble grain we sprinkle on our food, has been used for centuries as a symbol of purity, preservation, and divine protection. The Bible tells us in Matthew 5:13, "You are the salt of the earth." That means you sitting there with tears in your eyes and faith in your heart, are called to preserve what is holy, to purify what is tainted, and to bring flavor to the world that has lost its taste for truth. So today I want to talk about the 5 places in your home where you can place salt, and as you do, I want you to watch, not with worldly eyes, but with eyes of faith, how God begins to move. My dear child, let me speak to you softly, yet with the strength of a storm wrapped in calm. You see, salt has been with us since the beginning of time, humble, common, and unchanging. But what many do not understand is that within those tiny grains lies a story as old as faith itself. Salt, simple and silent, carries the divine fingerprints of God's intention. It does not boast, it does not clamor for attention, yet it preserves what would otherwise decay. That is its secret, its sacred purpose, to keep what is good, good. When Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," he was not simply talking about seasoning a meal. No, he was calling forth something holy from within us. He was reminding us that like salt, we were created to hold back the decay of the world, to preserve truth in a time when lies are dressed in light, to protect goodness in a season when evil walks so comfortably in daylight. Salt, my dear, is not loud, but it is powerful. It works quietly, faithfully, transforming whatever it touches, just as faith does. Salt knows who it is. It doesn't try to be sugar, and it doesn't envy the spice. It simply does what it was born to do: purify, preserve, and protect. In that same way, you must know who you are. You are not meant to blend into a world that has forgotten its flavor. You are meant to stand as a divine reminder that holiness still has a taste, that righteousness still has a scent, that love, when it is pure, still preserves life. You see, when God created salt, he made it incorruptible. You can bury it in the dirt, you can drown it in water, but salt remains salt. It cannot lose its essence. That is how God designed you too. Life may cover you in dust, disappointment may try to dissolve you, but your divine purpose cannot be erased. The essence of who you are, your goodness, your strength, your faith, is not something the world gave you, so the world cannot take it away. When you hold salt in your hand, you are holding a piece of the earth's faithfulness. It is a covenant between creation and the Creator. In the old days, men sealed promises with salt. To share salt with someone was to share trust. To say, "What I have promised, I will keep." Even God, when he spoke of his covenant with his people, called it a covenant of salt, everlasting and unbreakable. Think of that, my dear one. God compared his faithfulness to salt because salt never fades, never rots, never changes its nature. So when I tell you to use salt in your home, I'm not telling you to practice a superstition. I am calling you to remember your covenant, to remember that your home is not just 4 walls and a roof. It is a sanctuary, a living altar. And salt, when placed with prayer and intention, becomes a symbol of that divine agreement. You are saying, "Lord, I still believe. I still trust you to preserve me. I still believe you can keep me from losing my flavor." In every grain of salt is a lesson in humility. Salt does not demand recognition. It dissolves and disappears, yet without it, life becomes tasteless. It teaches us that true power does not need to announce itself. Real influence moves quietly, like salt melting into soup, like love healing without boasting. When you sprinkle salt, you are participating in that quiet ministry, the ministry of transformation through presence. Salt also purifies. You can pour it into wounds to cleanse them, though it stings. And isn't that like truth, my dear? Sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. Sometimes God's cleansing feels like pain before it feels like peace. When he sprinkles salt into the open places of our souls, he is not trying to harm us. He is trying to heal us. Because impurity cannot stay where salt abides. Darkness cannot remain where truth resides. There is also a wisdom in how salt works. It preserves by drawing out what should not stay. It removes moisture, pulling away what invites decay. God often does the same with us. He pulls away comfort, familiarity, and pride, not to punish us, but to preserve us. Because sometimes the very things we cling to are what cause our souls to spoil. My grandmother used to say, "Baby, don't be afraid when life gets dry. That's just God preserving you." And she was right. Dry seasons don't mean God has left. They often mean He's protecting what's inside you from spoiling before it's time. That's salt at work. Invisible, quiet, holy preservation. Salt is also enduring. You can leave it on the shelf for years and it will not rot. That's what faith is supposed to be. Not temporary, not convenient, but steady. The kind of faith that still believes when prayers go unanswered, that still trusts when the road grows long. Because when the Spirit of God fills you, your faith becomes like salt. It can endure any storm, survive any drought, and still remain what it was meant to be. So, my dear one, when you place salt at your door, or in your kitchen, or by your window, do it with understanding. You are not just sprinkling a mineral, you are declaring a message to the heavens and to the earth. You are saying, "Lord, preserve this home, preserve my mind, preserve my peace." You are reminding your spirit that you were never called to decay with the world, but to preserve what is divine within it. Let the salt remind you of who you are. Steady, faithful, incorruptible in your essence. Let it remind you that you were created to hold back darkness, to keep love from spoiling, and to season the world with grace. You are salt, my child, sacred and necessary. Don't lose your flavor trying to fit into a tasteless world. Be who you were designed to be. A living testimony that purity still has power, that holiness still has heat, and that faith, even when quiet, can still preserve a generation. And when you understand that, when you live like salt, faithful, preserving, unchanging, then and only then you will see God move not only in your home, but in every corner of your life. For it is the simple things, the humble things, the unnoticed things, that God uses to reveal His greatest glory. And in that glory, my dear one, your spirit will find its true preservation. My beloved, let us talk about the places we forget, the corners, the thresholds, the quiet spaces that gather dust and shadows alike. For there are places in our homes, and yes, in our hearts, that we walk past every day without noticing the silence they hold. The corners, my dear, are more than geometry. They are symbols of the hidden things, the tucked away burdens, the unspoken prayers. They are the still edges where yesterday's pain sometimes lingers and tomorrow's hope waits patiently to be invited in. When I speak of putting salt in the corners of your home, I'm not merely talking about the edges of a room. I'm speaking about the forgotten places in your life. For we all have corners, some filled with memories we dare not revisit, others holding fears we never named aloud. But let me tell you, the Spirit of God moves even in corners. He is not afraid of your shadows. He is not offended by your dust. He is the light that reaches what you thought was unreachable. You see, darkness does not disappear because we ignore it. It disappears because light insists on shining. And salt in all its quiet purity carries that insistence. When you place salt in those corners, it is an act of declaration, a soft but powerful sermon that says, "No darkness lives here. No fear hides here. This home, this heart belongs to God." There is a sacred boldness in cleansing the corners. For evil does not always march through the front door. Sometimes it tiptoes through the edges in bitterness unspoken, in resentment left to fester, in wounds never properly healed. It hides in the spaces we neglect. That's why you must go there, my child. Not with fear, but with faith. Not with anxiety, but with authority. Salt is a reminder that what is unseen still matters. It speaks to the hidden places of the soul. It whispers into silence. You are not forgotten. When you pour salt into a corner, you are not simply cleaning. You are reclaiming. You are saying, "Here too God reigns." You are telling every dark thought, every secret sorrow, every lingering whisper of the enemy, You have overstayed your welcome. And isn't that what healing truly is? A reclaiming, a taking back of the rooms of our hearts that pain once occupied. The corners of our lives need attention, not avoidance. They need prayer, not pretending. Too often we sweep blessings to the center and push our burdens to the edge. But the corners, those quiet margins, need to be consecrated too. Salt, when placed with intention, absorbs heaviness. It cleanses not only the air, but the energy that has sat too long without movement. It does in the physical what prayer does in the spiritual. It purifies. And sometimes that's what your home, your mind, your spirit needs, a cleansing of corners. I have seen women pray in the middle of a room, but I've seen warriors pray in the corners, because that's where the battle hides. That's where the enemy thinks you won't go. But when a child of God bends down low, touches those edges with salt and scripture and says, "This house belongs to the Lord," heaven takes notice. The atmosphere shifts. My grandmother, God rest her soul, used to tell me, "Baby, don't just clean where people can see. Clean where spirits might hide." I didn't understand it then, but I do now. Because the unseen is just as real as the seen. The spiritual is just as real as the physical. And salt, that humble mineral, has been a bridge between the two since the beginning of time. When you purify the corners, you purify the boundaries of your life. You're telling the enemy that even the edges are guarded. You're saying you can't have this space, not even an inch. And that's powerful because evil thrives in permission. But when you sanctify those places, physically and spiritually, you revoke permission. You reclaim territory. Let me remind you of something simple yet profound. Light shines brightest in corners. Go into a dark room and strike a match. You'll notice that the corners are the last to be filled with light. But once they are, the entire space feels whole. That is what faith does when you let it reach the hidden places. That is what prayer does when you dare to take it to the edges. And so, my dear one, as you move through your home with your handful of salt, take your time. Let your heart be gentle, but your spirit firm. Touch those corners with reverence, with purpose, and whisper your truth. God, let there be light here. Let the salt remind you that holiness is not confined to altars or pulpits. It belongs in living rooms, in kitchens, in doorways, and yes, in corners too. Because your home is not just a place where you live. It is a reflection of your spirit. And when you cleanse its corners, you are also cleansing the corners of your soul, the places where you've stored old grief, the thoughts you've buried instead of blessing, the fears that sit quietly, hoping to be left alone. Do not leave them alone, my dear. Invite light there, pour salt there, let God move there, for you cannot heal what you refuse to face, and you cannot purify what you refuse to touch. The corners will stay dark until you decide to bring light. And when you do, when your hands sprinkle salt and your lips whisper prayer, something shifts. The air feels lighter, the home feels safer. Peace begins to linger like the soft scent of morning after rain. Because that's what happens when faith becomes action. That's what happens when salt meets shadow. So yes, my beloved, cleanse your corners. Not just the physical ones, but the emotional and spiritual ones too. Forgive what still hides there. Release what has outstayed its welcome. Speak blessings into places you once avoided. Because a home where every corner carries peace is a home where God loves to dwell. And when he dwells there, nothing unholy can remain. Every whisper of fear turns silent. Every remnant of sorrow begins to fade. The corners shine again, and your soul remembers what it means to be whole. So go on now, with salt in your hand and faith in your heart. Go into the corners and let the light do what it was born to do, drive out the darkness. For God moves in corners too, always has, always will. My dear heart, let us linger a while on this truth, that words have weight and faith gives them wings. You see, salt in itself is only a symbol, a humble thing resting quiet in your hand. But when faith breathes upon it, when prayer stirs around it, that which was ordinary becomes extraordinary. God has always chosen the simple to confound the mighty, the soft to overcome the strong, and the quiet to outlast the loud. It is not the salt that moves mountains, my child. It is the word of faith that calls upon the one who can. The Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue. How many times have we spoken our defeat and wondered why victory took so long to arrive? How many times have we cursed our own blessings with doubt disguised as honesty? But oh, when a believer speaks with faith, heaven leans in to listen. When a woman or man of God opens their mouth and declares, peace lives here, love reigns here, God moves here, the unseen begins to obey. The atmosphere itself shifts. Faith-filled words are not idle talk. They are keys to spiritual doors. They unlock favor, they command healing, they announce the arrival of deliverance. So when I tell you to speak over your salt, I am not asking you to perform a ritual. I am inviting you to enter a relationship. Between your words and your faith, between heaven and your home, the salt becomes the witness, but your faith is the power. You must understand that God spoke the world into being. He did not sculpt it with his hands, he declared it with his voice. Let there be light, he said, and light obeyed. If the Creator formed galaxies with words, imagine what your words, inspired by his Spirit, can form in your life. The power that spoke creation into existence now lives inside you. Every time you speak faith, you echo eternity. But faith, my dear, is not noise. It is not volume. It is conviction. Faith whispers truth so deep that even the walls listen. So when you hold that salt and whisper your prayer, you are not performing a ceremony. You are creating covenant. You are declaring, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. There is a moment when your words and your faith align, and when that happens, something sacred ignites. Heaven begins to move, not because you shouted, but because you believe. You could whisper one sentence with faith and shake the foundations of despair. You could speak one word of truth and scatter legions of lies. The authority is not in your tone, it is in your trust. Some folks pray with doubt dressed up as politeness. They ask God to move, but keep a backup plan ready in case he doesn't. That is not faith, child. That is fear in disguise. True faith stands on the edge of the impossible and says, God, I trust you anyway. It takes salt in hand and says, I believe this small act will open great things. It dares to expect what eyes have not seen. When you place salt at your door and speak God's word over it, you are saying to the spiritual realm, I know who I belong to. You are not begging darkness to leave, you are commanding it to go. For the believer who speaks with faith does not plead, they proclaim. The enemy understands authority, he trembles not at human strength, but at divine certainty. Every syllable of faith you speak becomes a seed in the soil of the Spirit. It may take time to sprout, but it will grow. Your declarations today become your reality tomorrow. When you bless your home with words of life, the walls begin to remember, the air begins to agree. The ground beneath your feet becomes a testimony that God was invited here. Now, I know some will say, but Dr. Angelou, words can't change things. And I will smile and tell them words are the only things that ever have. They change hearts, they start wars, they build nations, they heal souls. And when words are dipped in faith, they change the unseen before they change the seen. Do not underestimate the whisper of a believer. Do not discount the prayer of a mother, the declaration of a father, the song of a child. These are the sounds that move heaven. These are the sounds that salt remembers. Every time you open your mouth in faith, the air bends toward obedience. The universe takes note of one who still believes in miracles. But my dear, let your words be seasoned with grace. Faith is not about shouting threats into the darkness. It's about inviting light into the room. Speak softly, speak lovingly, but speak with certainty. Say, God, let this home know peace. Let this air carry love. Let no voice of hatred or fear find rest here. And as you say it, believe it. Don't look for instant fireworks. Look for quiet change. For God often moves not in the earthquake or the fire, but in the still small voice. There is a sweetness in learning to speak life. It changes not only your home, but your heart. Because the more you declare what God can do, the less room there is for complaining about what you cannot. Your tongue becomes a tool of creation instead of destruction. You begin to speak as one who knows they have been given the authority to call things that are not as though they are. And let me tell you a secret, child. The world listens differently to a person who believes their own words. Faith gives your voice gravity. It gives your prayer weight. When you believe, truly believe, your words stop floating and start planting. They take root. They produce. They create atmosphere. So as you stand in your home holding salt in one hand and hope in the other, let your lips part with purpose. Declare blessings over your rooms. Call peace to your corners. Speak joy over your kitchen and rest over your bed. For as you speak, God is moving. Angels are responding. The invisible world is realigning itself to your faith. And when you finish, do not rush away. Stand still for a moment. Feel the quiet power in the air. That, my dear, is faith at work. Unseen but undeniable. You'll notice it in the calm that follows, the lightness that lingers, the peace that stays. Because faith has done what faith always does. It has turned your words into movement. So remember, the salt is your symbol, but the word is your weapon. The prayer is your key. The faith in your chest is your power. Speak not as one who hopes God might hear you, but as one who knows he already has. Speak light into darkness, blessing into emptiness, and truth into confusion. And then watch God move, just as he always does, through the voices of those who dare to believe. My beloved, peace is not just the absence of noise, nor is it the quiet that comes when the world finally pauses its shouting. Peace is a presence. It is the gentle whisper of God moving through the soul, saying, "Be still, child, I am here." When you walk into a home where peace abides, you can feel it. It rests on the air like morning dew. It hums in the silence between heartbeats. It is not loud, but it is mighty. And when that peace comes from God, no storm can shake it loose. You see, every home, every heart has a rhythm. Some homes beat with chaos, others with calm. Some hearts are filled with love, others with lingering war. But a home aligned with heaven carries a melody that the angels recognize. It hums with holiness. And that melody begins when you invite God to dwell not just in your rooms, but in your rest. Now, I must tell you this truth. A weary soul cannot worship well. A restless heart cannot receive divine instruction. That is why the Lord in his infinite wisdom created rest. Even God, after forming the heavens and the earth, took a day to breathe. So when you place salt in your bedroom, you are not performing a decoration. You are declaring a dedication. You are saying, this space is for peace. This bed is for healing. This night will be holy. The world teaches us to run, to move, to do, to achieve, to chase. But peace does not come to those who chase. It comes to those who surrender. When you lay down at night, you are invited to surrender your worries, your fears, your unfinished plans, and let God take the night shift. Because while you sleep, he still works. He still heals. He still guards. Your bedroom, dear one, is not just a place for slumber. It is a sanctuary. It is where your spirit exhales, where your body renews, and where your heart learns to trust again. But too often we let that sacred space become crowded, not just with things but with thoughts. We lie in bed and wrestle with regrets. We rehearse our worries, we replay words that hurt us and imagine battles that may never come. Yet peace cannot share a room with anxiety. One must leave for the other to live. That is why salt beneath your bed, prayed over with faith, becomes a symbol of cleansing. It absorbs what the day tried to leave behind. It whispers to the restless mind, be still. It reminds your spirit that even in the dark, God is present. And my dear, when you truly believe that, when you believe that God sits beside your bed and watches over your rest, fear loses its footing. Nightmares lose their permission. There is a sacred stillness that God gives to those who trust him with their nights. The kind of peace that wraps around you like a blanket and sings you into healing. That peace is not earned, nor can it be purchased. It is given freely to those who make room for it. So make room. Clear the spiritual clutter. Let no resentment hide in your pillows. Let no bitterness sleep beside you. Forgive before you close your eyes, for unforgiveness is a thief that steals rest. The enemy knows that a tired believer is a vulnerable one. That's why he wages his battles in your sleep. But God, in His mercy, has given you authority to guard your rest. So speak over your bed. Lay your hands upon your pillow and say, Lord, let my dreams be washed in your light. Let my body find renewal. Let my mind find peace. As you speak it, heaven hears it. And if your nights have been restless, if your sleep has been filled with turmoil, let this truth find you. Peace is not something you have to chase. It is something you have to invite. It comes where it is welcomed. It dwells where it is honored. So honor it. Keep your bedroom sacred. Fill it with gentle music, with prayer, with gratitude. Speak softly there. Rest your phone, your worries, your plans. Outside the door, enter as one who is entering holy ground. Because the moment you understand that your rest is spiritual, you will protect it fiercely. You will not let anxiety talk to you past midnight. You will not let fear sing you lullabies of what-ifs. You will not let yesterday borrow your tomorrow. You will sleep in peace because your God neither slumbers nor sleeps. He keeps watch while you close your eyes. There is something powerful about a believer who rests well. It is a sign of trust. It tells heaven, I believe you've got this. It tells the enemy, you can't reach me here. It tells your soul, it is safe to let go. That is what faith looks like in its gentlest form, surrendering the night to the hands of God. Peace in your home begins with peace in your heart, and peace in your heart begins with trust. If you can trust God with your day, you must also trust Him with your dreams. Rest is not laziness, it is worship. It is a declaration that you believe God will continue to work even while you do nothing. When you rise in the morning after resting in divine peace, the world feels different. The air seems kinder, the light seems softer, and your steps carry new strength. That is not coincidence. That is restoration. That is what happens when you invite the Prince of Peace to dwell where you lay your head. So, my beloved, as you place that pinch of salt beneath your bed or upon your nightstand, don't rush the prayer. Speak slowly from the deep well of your spirit. Say, God, I give you this room. Let your peace fill it. Let no shadow enter. Let no voice of fear speak here. And then let the silence follow. For silence, when filled with God's presence, is never empty. It is full of assurance. Let your home become a resting place for His Spirit. Let your bedroom be the softest corner of His temple. For peace is not meant to visit. It is meant to dwell. It is not a guest. It is a gift. Keep it safe. Keep it honored. And it will keep you. And when the morning comes and sunlight kisses your walls, whisper a thank you. Because you will have experienced something sacred, not just sleep, but holy rest. The kind of rest that renews not only your body, but your soul. That is the peace of God. That is the gift that salt, faith, and prayer can invite into your home. And once you have tasted that peace, my dear, you will never again settle for rest without God in it. My dear one, let me tell you something tender and true. God moves in the ordinary. He moves in the quiet spaces between our breaths, in the small acts that seem too simple to be sacred. But that is His way. He hides His power in humility. He wraps His miracles in the plain things of life, so that only those with eyes of faith will see. Salt, that humble grain, is one of those simple things. It sits quietly in your kitchen, resting without pride. But within it is a lesson for the soul. The ordinary, when placed in divine hands, becomes miraculous. You see, we often expect God to appear in thunder, in flashes of glory, and grand displays that make the world tremble. But the same God who split the sea also whispered to Elijah in a still, small voice. The same God who formed galaxies also knows the number of hairs upon your head. Greatness, my child, is not always loud. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes it hides inside a handful of salt and a prayer of faith. Faith has never been about spectacle. It has always been about trust, quiet, steady, unshakable trust. When you take something small, something simple, and offer it to God with belief, heaven takes notice. It is not the object that matters. It is the heart that holds it. God can turn the mundane into a miracle when it is lifted up in faith. Think of the widow with her jar of oil who had nothing left but obedience. Think of the boy who gave his 5 loaves and 2 fish, not knowing that in the hands of Jesus a small meal could feed a multitude. Think of Moses, whose rod was just a shepherd's stick until God turned it into a staff of power. It has always been this way, God using what is ordinary to do what is extraordinary. So when you hold salt in your hand, don't look at it with earthly eyes. See it with your spirit. You are holding a symbol of faith, a reminder that God can use even this to remind you of His presence. That is how miracles begin, not with grandeur but with willingness, not with power but with purity of heart. There is a sweetness in trusting God through the small things, because it teaches you that He is not far away. He is not unreachable or indifferent. He is near, so near that He can move through the salt in your hand, the breath in your lungs, the whisper in your prayer. Faith turns the smallest action into a divine invitation. Some may laugh at such faith. They may say, "How can salt bring change?" But the wise do not mock what they do not understand. The power is not in the salt itself. It is in what the salt represents. It is in the act of surrender, in the declaration that says, "God, I believe you can use anything, even this." That is where the miracle begins. Faith, when lived out, transforms everything it touches. It makes washing dishes holy. It makes sweeping the floor an act of worship. It turns your home into a sanctuary and your silence into prayer. When you live with faith, you begin to see God everywhere, in the smile of a stranger, in the sound of rain, in the taste of salt on your lips. You begin to understand that there are no small moments in a life that walks with God. So often we wait for the big move of God, the healing, the breakthrough, the revelation, and we miss the gentle miracles unfolding in front of us every day. The fact that you woke up this morning, the fact that your lungs fill with air, that your heart still beats with hope, that is God moving, that is grace in motion. When you walk through your home, placing salt in those 5 places, you are not summoning magic. You are awakening awareness. You are training your eyes to see God in the everyday. You are saying, "Lord, I know you are here, even in this." That awareness, my dear, is itself a miracle. For once your eyes open to the sacred and the simple, you will never again feel that God is distant. The world will tell you that miracles belong to the chosen few, that they are rare and reserved for special times. But I tell you, miracles happen daily to the one who believes. The miracle is not always in what changes around you. Sometimes it is in what changes within you. The peace that replaces your fear, that's a miracle. The forgiveness that blooms where bitterness once lived, that's a miracle. The strength to stand up one more time when you thought you couldn't, oh, that's a miracle too. Faith is what turns the act of placing salt into an act of power, because faith invites God to do what only He can do. It tells Him, "I trust you to move, even if I cannot see how," and God, being who He is, always honors faith. He delights in it. He leans close to those who dare to believe that He still works wonders through humble means. When you live this way, with faith woven into your every gesture, you stop separating the sacred from the simple. You stop waiting for Sunday to feel holy. You start realizing that God can show up in your kitchen as easily as He can in your church. That He can speak through the wind at your window as easily as through the words of a preacher. The divine does not wait for ceremony, it responds to sincerity. So yes, put salt in those 5 places, not because the salt holds power, but because your belief does. Let it be a symbol of trust, a reminder of the covenant between you and God. And as you do, watch how peace settles in your spirit. Watch how heaviness lifts. Watch how joy begins to flow again, not because of superstition, but because faith makes room for God to move. And when He moves, it won't always be with thunder. Sometimes it will be in the soft shifting of your heart, in the smile that returns to your face, in the burden that suddenly feels lighter. Sometimes his movement will be as quiet as salt dissolving in water, unseen but undeniable. My dear one, never doubt that your faith can make the ordinary extraordinary. Never forget that your smallest act of trust can become the stage upon which God reveals His glory. He does not need gold or grandeur to show His strength. He only needs a willing heart. So hold that salt with reverence. Not because it is powerful, but because it reminds you that you are powerful. When you believe, God can move through your hands, your home, your hope, and when He does, the whole world will know that the miraculous still walks among us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to believe.